Hi there, and today we're going to be adding 2 more pieces to my upscaled mini loader. Firstly, a fairly boring bit, the 1x2 brick. But secondly, one of the coolest bits, the yellow steering wheel. So if you're new to this series, what I'm doing is building the set 607, which is this mini loader, at 6:1 scale. And to give you an idea of what that scale looks like, this is the upscaled version, and this is the original version on top. And so far I've made the yellow 4x4 with the black 2x3 plate on top, and the 2 black 1x1 round bricks, which are meant to be the engine exhaust pipes. And then underneath I built a black 4x4, a 1x2 and a yellow 1x2 plate, and we finished off the last video by building the wheels. Now I know that everyone is absolutely dying for me to make the scoop at the front of the loader, and I've nearly collected all the yellow pieces that I need to build that, but as it is the coolest part of the set, I really need to leave that to the last video. And I have shown the prototype for my scoop on previous videos, but if you're new to the series, this is what I'm planning, and I'm going to build it only a lot wider. Now building the 1x2 brick is going to be a fairly simple build, and earlier on in the series I did build this 1x2 plate down here. And if you saw that video, you may remember I did build it with its studs on originally, and then I took them off when I added it to the main build, and I kept the parts for those studs to add on to the top of this brick later on. So here they are ready for today's video. And then once we've built that, we're going to move on to the steering wheel. Now I have built one of these before in light grey for my upscaled space buggy. And if you saw that video, you may remember that I was having terrible difficulty trying to replicate this in 6:1. But then I discovered that a mock builder on Rebrickable had already designed one himself, and it was far superior to anything I had come up with. Now his name is Brickler, and I bought his instructions from Rebrickable for this steering wheel, and I contacted him and he was quite happy for me to show you how to build his steering wheel on my channel. So another big thank you to Brickler, and he's got a vast array of instructions on his Rebrickable site on how to build various Lego items at 6:1 scale. But just before we start building with all these yellow bricks, a very quick shout out to all my channel members. Thank you so much for your support in helping me buy parts and keep this channel going. And if you're interested in becoming a channel member and getting your name on a brick in my videos, you can click on the join button below this video or the link in the description and find out how. Or if you'd like to support the channel at no cost to you, and you're buying anything from lego.com, please use my affiliate link in the description below. It won't cost you anything, but Lego will give me a small commission on everything people buy. But let's get into building that brick and that steering wheel with this absolute sea of yellow parts. Now for the bulk of this brick, we're only going to need 5 different types of part. And of course at 6:1, a 1x2 brick becomes 6x12. So I'm starting off with 2 1x10 plates and 2 1x6 plates. And we're going to cover that with a whole bunch of 1x4s. So if I stick 1 on the end, and then 4 goes into 12 beautifully. So we're just going to run these all the way along the back edge. Then another one on this side. And then 3 more along the front edge. And that's our first layer complete. And of course the 6:1 scale goes in all directions, so the height of 1 brick is 1 brick, so the height of our upscaled version will be 6 bricks. But the height of one of those layers of bricks is going to be taken up with a plate layer at the bottom, a plate layer at the top, and then the smooth tile layer on top of that. So we're going to need a total of 5 layers of bricks, so I'm going to build those up now. And for strength, I'm going to alternate layers of just the 1x4s with a layer of 1x6s on the end, with 2 extra 1x6s down the side, and then filling in the gaps with 1x4s. They're going to repeat that all the way up, so a layer of just 1x4s, and then one with 1x4s and 1x6s. So our third layer is 1x4s, fast like that, and then another layer with 1x6s, and 1x4s, and 2 more 1x6s. So now we're up to 1, 2, 3, 4 layers, 1 more layer with 1x4s on top. And there is our 5 layers of bricks, plus our plate at the bottom. And what we're going to do is going to cap that off with 2 6x6 plates. Like that. So our 6 layers, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in bricks, and we've got 2/3 of a layer in plates. So what we need to do now is use our lovely smooth tiles and studs, which we took off the 1x2 plate earlier on in the series, and add those on top. So to give it that lovely smooth look on top, we're going to do a layer, or well, a row of 2x4 tiles, and then another row underneath. Then we have to attach our studs along here. So we're going to have a 2x2 tile and then a 2x2 plate, and that's where our first stud will sit. The gap in between with a 2x4, another plate for the other stud, and then finish it off with a 2x2 tile. And that is now our correct height. You can see we've got 5 and then 1, 2, 3 plates make a brick, so we've got our 6 bricks high. Now for the black studs, I was able to use this handy 4x4 round brick. Then I just put a 2x2 round plate and a 3x3 tile in the top, and we've got a complete stud just with a couple of pieces. However, Lego don't make that brick in yellow, so we have to build the yellow stud out of plates. So we get a 4x4 plate and add another one on top. Then for the smooth effect, we've got a 2x2 tile in the middle, and then we've got the 2x2 macaroni tiles around the outside, which gives us our completed stud, which is 3 plates high, and they get put on top here and here. And then we have our, oh, that's not in the right place, there we go. Then we have our, no, that's not in the right place either. Let's move it over one. There we go. That is our completed 1x2 brick. Now, because the base of the steering wheel is also a 1x2, we're going to start off the build for that in a similar way to the brick. So we're starting off with 2 1x12 plates and 2 1x4 plates. Then we're going to add some 1x10 bricks on top of the 1x12s, and then some 1x6s down the sides, which is another way to do this first layer as we did on the brick. But obviously, as this is going to be only 1 plate high, we're going to add our 6x6s at this stage, ready for our smooth layer of tiles. And then that'll give us our 6 layers, 3 in the brick, 1 plate, and 1 tile. Next, we're going to add a surround of tiles to this. So we're going to add 2 1x3s on the front edge, and then 2 1x4s down the sides, and then 2 1x6s along the bottom. Then we're going to fill everything apart from this 1x6 at the top with 2x2 tiles. So nice and easy to do. Just 2 rows all the way along. Two more rows, 1 there, and the final 2 on the end. And then we've just got this row of 1x6 here for the steering wheel column. And that steering column is going to start off with just a regular 1x6 brick, but all the way up we're going to need an awful lot of snot pieces to do this beautiful curve underneath the steering wheel. So we have a 1x6 to start with, and then we're going to do a layer of 1x2 snot bricks, which gives us the start of our smooth face here. Then, just so we can stagger the joints, we've got some 1x2 snot bricks, and then in between them we're going to put some 2x2s like that. And then our last layer of snot bricks, we've got 2 more 2x2s in the corners. Then we need to start smoothing off the top, and what we're going to do is get 2 1x2 plates, join those together, and put a 1x2 tile on the top, and that goes on the top of this side. And then we're going to have exactly the same build on the other side. And then in the middle, we're going to put a regular 1x2 brick, and then this 1x2 panel piece, which gives us that effect, and that gives us space for the steering column to be leaning back slightly. Then just before we smooth off the front, we're going to build it up ever so slightly. So we've got 2 1x6 plates to go on the front sides like that. Now, I know people do object to this, but I am going to use plate of a different colour. It's never going to get seen, and I always try to use pieces I have in my inventory as a cheaper option to buying more yellow parts. Then above that plate, I've got this bracket piece, which is a 2x2. It's 2 plates high on one end and has 2 studs on top. So we're going to pop that just there. And then down the sides, we're going to start adding our smooth tiles. So we've got a 1x4 and a 1x3 above it, and we can do exactly the same on the other side, 1x4 and a 1x3. And then another non-yellow piece, but at least it's the same colour as the first one. We've got a 2x4 plate to sit behind that bracket. Then we're going to start adding those beautiful curves for the steering column. And what we're going to do is these 2x2 curved slopes. So we've got 2 of those at the bottom. And then, the steering columns come off, and then we've got the same curve but in a 1x4 that goes on top of that, and add 2 more 2x2s, And then because we need space in the middle, but we still need a vague curve, what we're going to use is 2 cheese slopes, which don't quite match the curve. But when the steering wheel's there, you probably won't really notice. And then the last few yellow pieces for the mounting for the steering wheel, we've got a yellow hinge brick, and both pieces are in yellow on this hinge. Quite often you get one of them in grey. Then we're going to add a 1x2 Technic brick, and then on top of that a 1x2 cheese slope. And then we can angle that ever so slightly backwards, ready to stick the steering wheel in this hole here. And that mini assembly just sits on top like that, and we angle it backwards, ready for the steering wheel. Now my designs weren't identical to this, but they were very similar, and this was as far as I got. It was the problematic steering wheel which always caused me issues. And then this is where I take my hat off to Bricoleur for an absolute beautiful design. It's incredibly complicated, has a lot of little pieces, and it's quite tricky to put together, but the result is absolutely worth it. And we start off with this Technic piece with 3 axles on it, and onto that we're going to add 3 of these mini builds. We're going to get hold of a 1x2 slope and put a 1x1 brick on the end of it, and then just behind that add a 1x1 plate. We're going to need 3 of those, so we've got 2 others here, and then the 1x1 brick sits on top of that axle. Now this does hold on just about with friction, but it's not the most sturdy of structures, as you can see there. So we're going to pop all these 3 on, but it doesn't hold itself together incredibly well until you add all the other parts on top of it afterwards. So that is the start of our steering wheel. And then on top of that, we're going to add one of these 3x3 disc pieces with the axle hole in the middle, and then we've got a 2 long Technic axle with a Technic pin on the end, and we're going to slide that through there, and then this goes in the top of that triple Technic axle piece, which is holding all the bricks together. And then next, fairly delicately, we have to turn the whole thing over and hold the entire structure upside down. These 3 legs are very wobbly at this point. Then we've got to try and add a 2x2 round plate onto that axle in the middle, which hopefully stops them from wobbling ever so slightly. Gives it a little bit more strength. And then on top of that, the hub of the steering wheel, we've got a 2x2 yellow tile, which goes on like that. Now temporarily I've just put the whole structure in this Technic beam just so I can keep it together and not use quite so many fingers. But a really brilliant part usage comes next. The black ring around the centre hub, Bricoleur used this tyre. However, it would give that ridge effect on the outside if we added it on. And he had a top tip in his instructions, which is to turn the tyre inside out. Now I never would have thought of that. Then that'll give us a smooth look on the outside. And we have to fix that over the top of the stud. Doesn't matter if those bricks fall off while we're doing it, as long as we can get it attached like that. We can always pop it back on afterwards. And then that, you can see the start of the hub of the steering wheel. Now for the outside of the steering wheel, we're using these 4x4 curved tiles. Now obviously we need 4 of these to make a circle. However, we've only got 3 spokes on the steering wheel. So we've got an incredibly complex structure to add 4 of these to 3 contact points. So for the first quarter, we've got this 1x2 plate with the Technic hole in it. And then we're going to add onto it a 1x1 plate on this end and a 1x1 tile on the other end. And then that is going to sit on top of, or underneath, our, which way around does it go? That way around. Going to sit underneath our first part of the steering wheel like that. Then we're going to build effectively the mirror image of that. So we're going to get another one of those plates with the Technic pinhole and add a 1x1 plate and a 1x1 tile like that. And then we're going to add that to the underside of this one. Just about there, I believe. Yeah, they look mirror image, so we're going to attach those next. Now, like I said, when this is finished, it holds itself together really well, but at this point it's very, very flimsy and delicate. But we've got to attach those Technic holes onto the studs of these 1x2 slopes. So one clicks onto there, like that, and then the other one clicks onto the other side. As long as it doesn't fall apart. Oh, no, not quite in there. There we go. As you can see, they do fall off fairly regularly. But if we reinstate that onto its axle, you then need to kind of just wiggle it around until they meet at the top. And you can see the start of the outer rib of the steering wheel. Next we're going to join these two curved tiles together underneath, so we're going to turn the whole structure over, which is easier to do now that Technic bar is attached. And then we're going to build a little structure out of a lot of these 1x2 curved plates. So we're going to have one with two on top of it, and I've already just dropped one on the floor. And then we're going to put a fourth one on top of that, like that. And then we're going to fill up the gaps with 1x1 round plates. So one above, one below on that end. Very difficult to see the black unless I should get my lights to reflect off it. And you can see that. So this little structure will now curve ever so slightly, and we're going to put them on top of the two tiles and join them together like that. And all of a sudden that is a lot more rigid than it was before. But it's okay, I've retrieved that 1x2 plate from the floor, but we're going to build the bottom half of the steering wheel next. So for the bottom half, I'm starting off with this 1x3 jumper plate, and we're going to turn that over and add one of the 1x2 plates of the Technic pinhole like that. And on the other side, add a regular 1x1 plate like that. And then on top of both of those, we're going to put a 1x1 round plate. So one on that side, one on the other side, and then that jumper plate is going to join these two last pieces from the outer rim of the steering wheel together like that. So I've taken the Technic beam off the main part of the steering wheel as it's a little bit more stable now, and then what we're going to do is that last slope piece here, the stud on top of that, is going to sit into the Technic hole of the part we've just made. So actually, yes, that's come off, so I might as well join them together out here like that, and we can slide it back onto the Technic axle inside. Then all we need to do is join these two tiles together, and then we've got our completed steering wheel. So to get these structures to curve around the steering wheel, again we're using a lot more of these 1x2 curved plates. As well as that, we're using a 1x2 curved tile, and then two 1x1 plates and one 1x1 round tile. So what we're going to do, we're going to make a little structure like this out of three of them to start, like that. And then on top of that, we're going to add a fourth one on this end, but on the other end we're just going to add a plate like that. Then our next layer, we're going to add our tile on top of it like that, and then our 1x1 round tile there, and then our last curved plate there. And if we turn it over, we've got a space here, and that's where our last 1x1 round plate goes. So you can see there as our little structure, and that is quite easy to articulate. What we're going to do, these two studs join these together. So what we're going to do, click those on this side, as long as they will click in, and then what we do, you curve this round so it follows the curve of those tiles above it, like that. Then we just need to make exactly the same structure for the other side, but in mirror image. And here's the same structure for the other side. So again, those two studs there are going to join the two tiles together. If we can get them to click into the right place. Just like that, and then curve the rest of the structure around so it matches the curve of the tiles. And then mine took a little bit of fiddling just to make sure this was all round and all the various plates underneath were following the curve of the tile, but otherwise we've got a completed steering wheel. And then obviously you remember we've got that Technic pin sticking out the back, and then that clicks into the Technic axle on top, and we've got our completed steering wheel, which even rotates quite happily. And here we have our two new parts to add on to our mini loader. And here's where I want to ask your opinion, and let me know your answer in my comments below. Now, all the earlier parts of the build are held together with regular Lego studs, like these ones here, not the upscaled Lego studs like these ones. The upscaled ones don't have enough friction to hold the structure together. So that means underneath this 2x3 black plate aren't upscaled studs, it's just regular studs, which means I can pick the entire structure up just by that plate. Now everything underneath here does need to be held together a lot more sturdily than the top parts do, so I could have actually kept that on regular upscaled studs and have it removable. Now, so what I was going to do was remove the studs here and replace them with regular plates, so these would then, the two new pieces would then sit on top. However, this will happily sit on there like that, and also the steering wheel will happily sit on there like that. They aren't part of the structure. I can easily remove them, which is great for taking it to LEGO shows. I just wondered what you thought. Should I attach them so they're physically stuck on with LEGO studs, or leave them so that they're removable? And also, it might mean a little bit more cost to me, but should I do the same on this side? Should I remove that 2x3 plate and put upscaled studs underneath it, so this piece would be removable as well, along with the two 1x1 round bricks? I'm going to 2 LEGO brick festivals, one in November in Chichester on the south coast of England, and one in December in Southampton, also on the south coast of England. And I'm wondering if it would be a better exhibit at the show if these would be removable. So please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But for now, the mini loader and the upscaled mini loader just have 2 more parts to go. And that is, of course, the all-important hinge scoop, which goes at the front. So as soon as the final yellow parts are ordered and arrive, that'll be the last video of the series, hopefully in a few weeks' time. Now this part was always going to be the challenge of the series, and that was whether the huge weight of the scoop at the front was going to be able to hold itself up under its own weight on the hinges attached to the loader itself. Now on my prototype here, I'm only holding on to 2 hinge pieces, and I'm going to have a lot more on the final version. And by my calculations, I'm hoping that that should be enough to hold itself up. However, I am not going to test this out until I make the final video. So I thought it would be fun to find out as I build whether my calculations are correct. And I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that it'll all work and the scoop will hold itself up. Otherwise, it's just going to have to sit there drooping an awful lot through the video. Then I'll have to go back to the drawing board and find another mechanism to hold the scoop up. So if you want to find out if it works or not, make sure you're subscribed and turn your bell notifications on, and then you'll be notified when the last video in the series comes out. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you'd like to support my channel and get your name on a brick, please click on that join button below or the link in the description. But if you've enjoyed what you've seen, an easier thing to help me out is just to click on that like button below. But of course, whatever you do, make sure you subscribe for more LEGO videos.